I'm sure all of us have been guilty at some point of having these visions or having these goals and writing things down, but never actually keeping accountable to them, never actually revisiting those goals, or never actually formulating a plan on how we're going to get to that goal. It's one of the most important areas I've found in not only business, but in life in general. If you want to start making improvements in whatever area it might be, you've got to have some kind of accountability. And that might mean for you an accountability partner, it might mean a business coach, it might mean a family member, it might mean yourself, it might mean just writing things down on a whiteboard with a deadline and making sure that you're working towards it. However, in this episode, we are talking about how to keep accountable and how to measure and track performance and goals and success and wins while we're on that journey of strategic planning for our business. And it's the third and final episode in that series, which has been a fantastic series. We've spoken all about how to decide and define your goals and then how to create a strategy to get there. We've spoken in the last episode about how to build out like a roadmap. So essentially like jotting out everything that we spoke about in the first episode so that it's there in front of you and it's something that you can communicate to your team. And in this episode, we're talking about how to make yourself primarily, and then of course the rest of your team accountable to these strategies that you've built out. I know you're going to love it. I'm sure a lot of you guys are going to have some really useful and valid feedback as well in relation to this topic. So I'd love to get your comments. Head across to the Facebook group if you're not already in there. You certainly should be. There's 6,000 global business owners in that group from trade backgrounds, and the conversations are absolutely fantastic. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. I know a lot of you guys have been doing this for a long time and you'd have some very valuable insights. So jump in there and have your say. Anyway, guys, enjoy the show. That's all from me. Speak to you in the following episode. Ciao. Today's podcast has been proudly brought to you by Tradie Web Guys. Tradie Web Guys work with tradespeople only on their websites and marketing solutions to help them stand out from their competition. Everything from web design through to SEO, search engine marketing, content creation, you name it, guys. It is a customized solution for trade-based organizations, and it's fantastic. Head across to tradiewebguys.com.au/apply, fill in the form, and let's have a conversation.
Giving tradies and contractors around the globe the tools to run a modern business. You're listening to Toolbox Talks from the Site Shed. Now here's your host, Matt Jones.
Hello, listeners and viewers. Welcome back to the Site Shed podcast. Thank you once again for sharing your earbuds with us, depending on where you are around the world. I'm hoping this hits you at an appropriate time because we are talking strategic planning, and I've got Kim Archer from BDR, which is Business Development Resources, located in Seattle in the USA. Kim, welcome back.
Thanks for having me. This is great. I've had a great time.
That's been good. This is the third and final wrap-up episode of our strategic planning series. In episode 1, we were talking a bit about the vision, how to decide what you want, how to get that. In the previous episode, we were talking about how to actually create the roadmap and where to start, in which in that episode, we're talking about you start with the end in mind, and then we can reverse engineer that map and that strategy so that we can start making incremental improvements in various areas, which all add up to the big goal at the end, which is awesome. Guys, if you missed those episodes, by the way, do go back and check them out. We sort of structure these series in a way where we try and lead into the episode from the previous, so it might make a bit more sense, and we might reference some things in the other episodes. If you haven't seen them or listened to them, go check it out. Anyway, in this episode, we're talking about accountability and measuring results, reporting and all that kind of stuff. I know that's been a significant change for me, to actually taking the time every week to remain accountable or check the reporting and make sure we're tracking the right way. That's really been, I think, the turning point for my businesses personally, and certainly a lot of our clients. I'm sure you've got a lot more experience with this than I would, but I'm really looking forward to hearing your framework around this and what you guys teach at BDR. I think in my experience, it's where a lot of companies fall over.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think a lot of it, especially as visionaries, most leaders or business owners are visionaries. And they want to jump in and go get after it. And without stopping and pausing and really taking into account the emotional side of it for your team members, the resources that are going to be required to implement such change, financial resources, as well as time resources, emotional resources. So really stopping, part of the business planning process is once you've got the numbers built out, and you figure out, as we talked previously, is how you're going to leverage all your transactions and maximize those. We really need to take those goals now and write them out in detailed implementation plans. We can dream about a bunch of stuff and talk about a lot of things, but really it's about getting stuff done.
That's so true. Like the difference between a dream and a goal is
Right.
writing it down. Strategy, right?
Right. Yeah. Write it down, share it, write out the steps to get there, and then hold yourself accountable to getting those things done.
That's always been my problem, to be honest. Well, until the last few years, and amazingly, the business is tenfold since then, since I've learned how to do this properly. But that was always my problem, where it was like, you got to write your goals down, you got to write your dreams down. I'm like, oh, great, here we go. Like, just sounded like rainbows and unicorns. But the missing part of that puzzle was always like the strategy and the accountability and the measuring the results. And you've got this big goal of, I want to live in a massive house. There's no strategy to get there. Like, and without that strategy, it's a wish.
Mm-hmm. Or you could have a strategy, but you don't have the discipline.
Right. Which is where accountability comes in, right?
Right, absolutely. And so as a leader, it's your responsibility to really set the tone for that. As a leader, everybody's eyes are on you. Everybody's watching you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he's preaching to us or she's preaching to us, but what are they doing to be able to achieve their particular goals and hold themselves accountable? I think that's what the beauty is of business coaching as well. Most business owners don't have anybody to talk to. They don't have anybody to hold them accountable, that hold themselves accountable. So having somebody that can really come alongside you and really understand what your key goals are and show you a pathway or share a best practice or help to clarify what those are, it can be extremely beneficial in achieving your end goal. I had a goal years ago to summit Mount Rainier, and I hired a coach to get me there. Yeah. And that was hard. You know, if I didn't show up at the gym at 4:30 in the morning, I was getting a phone call saying, where the hell are you? The biggest component of this is understanding the dynamics of change as a leader, how your team is going to respond, how your team will respond to change, and the resources and the time needed and the detailed steps to be able to get there.
But I've always found for me, like, well, having an accountability partner has made me a better leader. And like the fact that I said to somebody, and I've got somebody who's like standing next to me in business where I can say, well, this is what I'm going to be doing this month. And then I go and do it, or I don't do it. If I don't do it, why didn't you do it? And it's not, doesn't always have to be, you won't do it every month. I can tell you now, you don't always hit these goals.
Right.
And I was just saying this to my coach only a couple of weeks ago. I was like, I feel like my whole life, I've always set goals and I'll always hit them 6 months after I've set them. I never seem to get them on time. But it doesn't really matter. Like the bottom line is you're working towards something and you're staying accountable to somebody on those things. And I found without that accountability, it just left me subject to tangents. Like I would just find myself going down these little rabbit warrens of things that are not helping me get to the actual final goal, which is now, I suppose, led to the point where and business owners, you'll do that. If you've got that strategy and you've got that accountability in place, you sort of start realizing, I'm spending way too much time over here. I need to get someone into the business that can do that for me so I can stay focused.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, stay focused on your gifts. Your gift is leadership, right? And so you need to be leading the team and planning for the team. Also, one component of that leadership is taking time for yourself so you can refresh, because you're the visionary as well. You got to understand what's coming at the team, plan out those organizational charts and whatnot.
It's the reality of the situation. As plumbers, as builders, as electricians, whatever, we're competent and good at delivering our trade. But then all of this stuff, which is essential for running a business or growing a business or sustaining a business, you can only learn this stuff through getting exposure with people that can hold you accountable to it. Like, you're not born knowing these things.
No.
You need a coach. You need somebody that can keep you in line. And if you don't get that person in your life or that company in your life or whoever, or that mentor or whatever, you're always going to do what you know, which is swinging hammers.
Right. Yeah. And you're not going to achieve that goal. Whatever it is that you have, you're going to struggle in achieving that goal. One thing I want to point out too is a lot of people will put together a business plan or they set that goal out. And when they don't achieve it, they're really hard on themselves. They beat themselves up and then they don't get back and get after it again. They just say, oh, I don't want to do that because, I really disappointed myself. And I don't want to go through that disappointment again. So therefore, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to commit. But the reality is once you set that goal, you may not hit the goal in the timeline that you had set it for. Once you put it down on paper, I see more people not hit their revenue goal, the budget for the year. They don't hit the revenue, the top line goal, but they hit their bottom line goal. And that is reason for celebration. Any completion that you get, we're going to lay out these goals. And when you complete one, get one done, celebrate, and then move on to the next one. But you focus on one. And leaders, we tend not to celebrate. We just keep pounding and pounding and pounding. One, we don't know what our goals are. We avoid them. And when we do get something done, we don't celebrate with ourselves or a team that something really great just happened. And we lose some momentum. One of the key things in the planning process, I believe, is also involving your team for team accountability, because it's just not about you as the owner. The entire team has got to be held accountable.
Yes.
And they need to know that you're going to hold them accountable. Your accountability of them tells them that you care. You deliver a message that you care about them. That you're not going to let them get away with going out and playing in the street and goofing off, that you're going to make sure that they're being held accountable to their goals. And they appreciate that. They know that they have some boundaries. They respect you as a leader. And they start wanting to follow, which is exactly what you're working to develop, that nice culture of respect for the leader.
With this accountability, measuring results, what typically do you guys teach as a frequency in terms of this is how often we should be revisiting our game plan and our strategy? Because I know in past I've worked with coaches and they set like these 3-month goals and you come back in 3 months. And I just found 3 months is just way too far in between. Like it's a quarter of a year. You can't reel it back in by then. Like it's a struggle to reel it back in by then. And so I'm sort of in the habit of looking at weekly deliverables and weekly goals. I guess the question I'm asking is, like in the last podcast, we spoke about building the roadmap. And so on the roadmap, we've basically gone, we've mapped out everything that's sort of from a business point of view, what needs to happen. How do we then transfer that into actionable deliverables? How do we delegate those deliverables? How do we buy in? How do we get the team to buy in and be accountable? And how do we, as a result, measure and track perhaps results, but certainly improvements, or it may not be results. It might just be tracking that things are being done, deliverables that will add to a result.
So depending upon the size of your company, this can be different for everybody.
Yeah.
So you're going to take what you can from this, but in a organization, if you have a couple of managers, and maybe you don't have any managers, maybe it's just you and a bookkeeper, maybe it's you and a lead technician and a bookkeeper, but you'll identify what your key goals are and what are those daily goals. I think I mentioned that we break the goals all the way down to a daily goal, a daily and a monthly. Okay. Now, every day, well, as far as your team goes, you want to meet with them I believe in every weekly meetings as well. And you ask that manager, if you have managers, you ask that manager to come to a scheduled meeting. This meeting occurs every Tuesday at 10 a.m. The meeting is going to last for 1 hour, or maybe it's 30 minutes, whatever it is, whatever it needs to be. And when you come to the meeting, I want the scorecard. And the scorecard includes how many calls did we run, how many callbacks did we have, what was our revenue, and how many accessories did we sell as a team. All of those are measured against the business plan because we broke those down to daily goals.
Gotcha.
So now we can see whether or not they're on target. So when we start the meeting, every meeting with clients I work with, if they have a large management team, and even if they don't, we set up a meeting schedule for the entire year, a reoccurring meeting schedule with each key team member.
And that's a one-on-one meeting or it's a team meeting?
It can be
or
a
both?
One-on-one and a team meeting.
Yeah, gotcha.
The team meeting, depending upon, again, the size of your company, can be every other week.
Yeah.
But then we can keep people in check. As you mentioned, if you let it go for a quarter, you've lost 3 months. How are you going to rebound from that? You need to manage it on an incremental basis and on that daily basis so you know whether or not we're hitting those goals or not. But if they have a reoccurring meeting occurring at this every Tuesday, I know I got to go in and meet with the boss and I need to bring this report. You as the owner, you're staying informed.
Yeah.
Then there's a quarterly business planning meeting where we get together as a group and we talk about successes and any course adjustments that need to be made. Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess that's like, in my experience as well, from the employee's point of view, and I never had this as an employee, so this is something I've learned since being a business owner, but the team really appreciates having deliverables that they can say, I've done my part, I've done what I said I was going to do this month. And then that might be remunerated in the form of a KPI or whatever, but essentially keeping them motivated and knowing that they're doing what they said they were going to do, like that really keeps them sort of striving. And I find without that, it's really hard because essentially you're like, well, you're part of the team, but do what you're doing without any instruction or without any measuring. And then we'll just do like an annual performance review and, well, we'll see what happens. There's no real structure behind it.
Yeah, yeah. And I think, that starts to build that culture that's not really where everybody's not chasing down to win the championship, take that trophy home, right? When you hold people accountable every week and you're holding them accountable to those daily goals and those quarterly goals, they become very invigorated by that. And it's really important to point out that they know you care, you're paying attention to them.
Mm.
They know you pay attention and you care about achieving the goal. You're serious. And the momentum that creates is exceptional.
Throughout this process, do you guys have a framework around like involving the team member, manager, staff member, whatever, in designing those results? Can you talk us through that? Because I know there's a lot of, certainly employees will struggle with is being given orders all the time without, like I found the best way to do it is to sit down with them and sort of say, well, like, let's have a look at what we're trying to achieve here. And you tell me what you think's the right sort of actions or the achievable results for this period. And then get them to buy into that process a bit with collaborate, if you will, because then I feel like they're far more willing to sort of follow something they've had a hand in designing.
Absolutely. Yeah. And when you're meeting with your team member, if you're meeting with managers, we want them to understand the numbers. So we need to empower them with understanding of how the numbers come together. So when we go through the business planning process, we will take the managers through the math because oftentimes their incentive plans are based upon profitability. If that department's profitable, we're going to share in the profits with you, manager. So therefore, you need to understand the numbers. But when I'm talking to a technician or somebody who's not a manager, I will typically spend more time. We don't talk about numbers. We talk about units.
Right.
How many units, how many jobs per month? You've got so many work hours during the month. How many of those work hours were spent producing versus callbacks? So we don't really dig into those numbers because oftentimes the team member, the administrative, the installer, the service technician, they're typically very, oh my gosh, you're just always money hungry. You just want to go after all the money all the time, don't you? And that's not it. They don't understand we have to make money so we can grow the business and provide a future for them. They don't understand for every dollar in wages we pay them, we might be paying another 50 cents out in benefits and taxes and insurance on that.
There's a fundamental misunderstanding of like the operation of a business. And I experienced this from firsthand when I worked in a company, sort of in a management position, and we were sort of there in charge of basically managing a product or a service. But the technicians in the field were always of the opinion of, oh, there's too many office staff. There's too many people in the office that we've got to pay for. They don't really understand like what's actually involved in order to keep bringing them the work.
Yeah. I like to compare it to football. I mean, if you watch a football game, how many people are on the sidelines that are not players? Right. There's a lot of them on the sideline, and there's a lot of people in the background supporting them in the field to make sure that they're successful every day. That's the job of the support team. We're here to support the revenue production team to ensure that they have the best day they possibly can.
So in terms of within a trade business, do you have like accountability partners, or is it typically like the manager who keeps the staff member accountable, or do you have like field members that are accountability partners or anything like that?
Yeah, sure. It depends upon the size of the business. The larger a business gets, the more ability you have to do things like that. But certainly we can have our lead technicians and whatnot. One thing I know here in the States we'll call installer. We're going to hire a new installer. We're going to train them up. A lot of people will refer to that installer as a helper. They're not a helper. If you call them a helper, that lead installer they're going to look at them and say, you're a helper. We call them apprentices, and we hook them up with people to help them through the process and help them. We believe in job descriptions as well that are tiered, maybe levels
Really?
one. Yeah, a level 1 through 5 job description. So
Right.
you're hiring in at a level 2, and here's the pathway to get you to a level 5.
Mm.
And the lead installer plays a role in ensuring that that person makes it to that next tier.
Gotcha. Oh, okay. So that's sort of tying back to the org chart.
Yes, yeah,
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 gotcha.
absolutely.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I know I've worked with colleagues and clients that have got these crazy like job titles for team members, and it's just like, really? But it's not what you were saying. It's not necessarily tied to the org chart. It's just some ridiculous title that they want to stick on a business card to make somebody feel off their chest or whatever.
Yeah,
I guess that does make sense though in dictating or communicating the different tiers within the org structure, because then that sort of ties back to that whole like being able to create a vision for the career instead of just offering a job, you know?
yeah. And it's a owner's responsibility to create that plan so they have a future. Love your team. Really love and care for your team. So heartfelt care and concern is the root of what we want our entire organization to feel. And our revenue production team, they're the ones that are out in front of the customer. They spend all day long in front of the customer. And if we're not treating them well or supporting them well back in the office, or they don't feel like they have a future or hope there at your company, what they display in the home or in that place of business may not be what you really want them showing.
This may be a loaded question, I suppose, in closing, and if there's not an answer for this, that's fine. But when we talk about measuring results, what are some of the main results or the main areas that we want to measure? Because sometimes, obviously, we're like, well, I want more money, but that's not really, the money is kind of the result of other things being achieved, right? So what are some of the other things that you coach people to get granular on when they're talking about tracking and measuring and reporting?
Mhm. So for service department, it is number of service calls that are coming in every day, your average
Yep.
number of service calls. We measure that. The budget comes up with number of service calls you should be have every single day as well. We compare those. Your budget might say you need 20 service calls a day and you're only achieving 15. Well, we got to get that made up.
Gotcha.
It really, number of leads, number of sales leads that are coming in as well. If you're doing more construction or commercial type work, number of estimates that you're putting out on a daily basis. Because we know if we set the pricing, so we control pricing, ownership, the leaders in the company, we control the pricing. If we set the pricing, we know that if we can get those results through those call counts, we'll see those revenue returns. So we really need to measure those call counts. Accessory sales as well on the job,
Upselling kind of thing.
Upselling,
Yeah.
yep. You want to measure your mix of product that you're selling. Good, better, best, fantastic, as well as number of accessories on a job. For HVAC, we have a huge amount of different
Right.
accessories that we can bring into the home that
Mhm.
never get talked about,
I mean, to be fair, most trades would. Like you look at a builder, we get different fixtures or different types of timber, or you look at a plumber and it could be different toilet suites or bathtubs or faucets and taps. And
Yeah, and you're using the same amount of labor, but as
right.
soon when you upsell that product, you gain gross profit dollars on that more expensive product.
A lot of guys are doing that quite well with flat rate pricing today, when they sort of have their pricing books, which give the customer the option. They say, well, you can have this, this, or this, and they essentially choose, and they outline the advantages of having different products and what they might deliver. And essentially, the customer often does a lot of the selling for them.
Yeah, actually, if you educate, inform, and offer, they usually buy something.
Yeah.
So,
And often they're like, well, I don't want to take the bottom one and I don't want to take the top one. So I'll take the middle one, which, conveniently, it's got the best profit margin in there for us. So, yeah.
right, yeah, exactly.
So service calls, sales leads, and estimates.
Watch your daily revenue every day. Your bookkeeper should be turning in your daily revenue for each one of your departments. And revenue is defined as what's been earned. It's not cash. It's what did you earn that day in revenue? What did you bill out? What could you bill the customer?
I'm with you.
Because that's what shows up on your profit and loss statement. And that's the number you got to know.
Yeah,
and then track your break even. So you get your daily billing and then you track to your break even every day.
Right.
Every day.
Okay. And so, I mean, obviously, if for smaller companies out there, they may not have the resource to do this every day, but would you recommend for a small business visiting this once a week, sitting down?
Yes. Yeah, if you're a one-man shop, certainly at least just keep a tally in your head. If you're a two-man shop, if you got somebody in the office, the administrator, bookkeeper, and they're using QuickBooks, there's no reason why they can't send you a text. Hey, guess what? We billed out $2,000 today, or we billed out 10,000. They can send you a text. It does not take long.
Yeah.
Don't let them use that as an excuse.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point.
Yeah.
Oh, this has been awesome. Well, look, I think we've kind of drawn this to a close. What are your thoughts?
Yes, I think so. I think it's been wonderful. I love planning. See so many people achieve their goals, and I get emotional when I talk about it.
Well, this is the thing, right? Once you understand the power of it, you do get emotional on it. Like, I mean, if I had to listen to this podcast maybe 5-10 years ago, right? And I'd be like, I just wasn't in the right frame of mind to absorb something like this. But once you start running a business and you realize how important these things that we're talking about are, when you've been through that journey and you've been in the place where you haven't used it, and then you're in the place where you have used it and you've seen the transition, it is emotional.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. It sure is. So I wish everybody a lot of success. I hope they all get busy putting together their business plans. Even roughing it out, doing something real quick. It doesn't have to be hard. Set the goal.
Exactly. I think then for me, the most important thing is just whatever you do, be accountable to it. If that means getting a colleague of yours to sit down and have a beer with every Friday afternoon and going through what's happened throughout the week, do that. Whatever. If you want to get a coach, do that. Just do something.
Do something.
Well, Kim, this has been great. Thank you very much for the listeners and viewers out there. Kim's from BDR, which is Business Development Resources, located in the US. The website's bdrco.com. And if you want to send an email through, info@bdrco.com is the email. Again, guys, if you've got any questions or if you have any experiences or anything you want to recap on, or if you want anything to be expanded on, just let me know wherever you see this come through, across social or in the Facebook community or whatever. I'm sure Kim will come back on the show to answer those questions. Kim, thank you so much for your time. It's been awesome.
Thank you.
And guys, that's a wrap. So see you next time.
Wahoo.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Toolbox Talks. If you're liking what you hear, then you can head across to thesiteshed.com, where you can join our community by signing up to our Toolbox Talks. You'll get sent a weekly notification, which is basically a highlight of everything that we've spoken about during that week, along with any other industry news that may be relevant or specific to the trades. If you're enjoying the show, you can head across to iTunes, Stitcher, or SoundCloud, where you can leave us a review. That would be fantastic, and all the reviews get read out in the show. Likewise, if you have any friends or colleagues that you think would benefit from the show and the episodes that we create, then please go ahead and share it with them.